How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Another day, another training camp practice for this Giants team. Not as much involving pads, but still got some really good work in. Brian Dable just did say before practice they were going to do a lot of third and long situations. So definitely putting the pressure on Daniel Jones, definitely putting the cards against him. And he showed out today. He had a really good practice, couple touchdown passes, did throw an interception to Adoree Jackson, but made some really nice throws under pressure to Richie James, who's been having a stellar practice. Stellar really training camp in general, so we'll discuss him a little bit. But DJ kind of bouncing back after a couple of tough days and down, practices where he was throwing some interceptions, missing some receivers, throwing behind receivers. But he came back today, had some really good opportunities to drive the length of the field and some kind of, I guess, constructed situations. But the third and long being more risky, taking taking the time to actually look through his progressions and figure out where the best opportunities to throw the football are and make good decisions when they're in bad situations. So I think that's kind of what Brian Dable is trying to get out of him right now, is put him in bad spots, see how he reacts, get the ball downfield and see if he can be accurate with it under pressure. There were some interesting takeaways that we will discuss from today's practice. But Anthony, what is your thoughts on Daniel Jones bouncing back, having a good day today, and showing us that the media narrative that some guys are trying to curate might just be wrong after all?
Yeah, I think it's super important for Daniel Jones to have this good day of practice. He was the star of the show today. He was the focus. Everybody's talking about how Daniel Jones performed today at practice, but they've been doing that every day, kind of. But today it was a little bit different because the past few days they've been talking about Daniel Jones as the focus of the practice and how bad he's been and how he sucks on third and long and how he's throwing interceptions and he looks inaccurate. But today, kind of the opposite. Apparently, he had a couple ugly interceptions, both to Adoree Jackson. But other than that, he threw a couple of touchdown passes. He completed a lot of third and longs. He connected on some deep shots and had some really good throws, which is all the stuff that you want to hear. That's a good day of practice at the end of the day, right? He's going to throw a couple ugly interceptions. They are practicing on 3rd and 10 plus situations. So there's going to be some bad throws and some bad, decision making from his part on the 3rd and longs if he gets a little pressure, whatever the case might be. Or keep in mind, Brian Dable likes to have him just throw up passes that he knows aren't going to be completed so they could see how the defensive backs react to the ball. So all of that goes together. But when you're talking about those, team drills where they're pretty much just scrimmaging each other at the end of the practice, what's important is to see Daniel Jones actually play like a starting level quarterback during that time. And he did today, which is very good. He did look like a starting level quarterback. He did throw touchdown passes. It's not like he got completely worked through 5 interceptions with 0 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 2 picks. And apparently one of those interceptions was also like a would-be sack. Like if it was in a game situation, the throw probably never even comes out because he would have been sacked. But of course, they're not hitting the quarterbacks. So they just counted it as the play going on, and it was an interception. But so I think that Daniel Jones having a good day is really important for the Giants. Keep in mind, we're really close to training camp or preseason here. Training camp's going to wrap up soon enough. And then that's when it really starts to count, right? Because Daniel Jones having some up days, some down days in practice, all that stuff, it matters, but it's going to really matter once he faces some different competition and we get into preseason next week.
Absolutely. And, before we dive into some of the main takeaways here, Dexter Lawrence actually said that Eli Manning addressed the team after practice and had some really interesting things to say. The number one thing, and you just got to love Eli Manning, man. He says, trust in the process, be a good teammate in person, compete. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. I like that line a lot. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So Daniel Jones, this is his opportunity, man. This is where we have to see the best version of him. This is the best situation he's been in as an NFL player. And of course, Pat Shurmur had 24 touchdowns with him, but that wasn't enough. 19 fumbles that season, then 2 years under Jason Garrett. And that was never going to be a successful environment for him, especially with the injuries to the playmakers, the offensive line really falling by the wayside. And now you have some good players in this line. You got Mark Lewinsky, Evan Neal, who, we'll discuss a little bit. Andrew Thomas has looked really sharp during practice, so that's a great sign. Lemieux has been playing some center. Josh Azudu had some great reps yesterday at left guard. I still think he could win that left guard spot. If we're being serious here, I really hope he does, because that's 4 years of cost-controlled rookie contract play at the very least. So I do liken him to win that job over Shane Lemieux, who I think would be, good to actually start getting reps at center. And we discussed that yesterday as well. There's a lot of kind of new developments coming out of the woodwork here during Giants camp. But I'll tell you what, Daniel Jones, this is going to be an opportunity for him to show what he can do on the run creatively. He can be more versatile. This offense is going to be a lot more spread oriented. We're going to see a lot more 1v1 battles, a lot more, playmakers in space. And this is where Daniel Jones can manufacture production, get the ball to his guys. If he can be accurate in the short to intermediate range, he can have a good season. We know he can throw the ball deep. We know he can get that ball downfield and not underthrow players. If he's accurate in the short to intermediate ranges and he can read those coverages properly, he can have a good season. But he's got to have not just a good season, he's got to have a great season, in my opinion, to justify an extension, because there's no way I'm paying him $25-30 million to be an average quarterback. I'd rather just utilize him as a bridge guy and then go and draft someone like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, depending on where our draft pick is. But do you think that the new management here, you have a new offense installed by Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, a spread offense, what do you think the probability is that Daniel Jones can turn this thing around and show us the necessary growth to really, kind of have faith in him as a franchise quarterback? It's going to take a lot. But if there's anyone that can pull this off, I think it's Daboll and Kafka.
Yeah, I mean, Dable and Kafka are two of the best offensive minds in football. Of course, they haven't proven themselves on the level that they're going to be competing at right now as a head coach and as an offensive coordinator, but they are well known for being really smart offensive guys that have played or coached for some really great systems, right? Coaching with, Brian Daboll was an offensive coordinator, one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. That's why he's a head coach now. And then Mike Kafka was coaching underneath Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, of course, a head coach of the Chiefs. So you've got a lot of great experience from both of those guys that's super applicable towards quarterback development, quarterback growth, and also just offensive success. So when you're looking at these guys, if there is an opportunity for Daniel Jones to succeed, it's going to be with these two coaches coaching over him. But then in terms of Daniel Jones, what does it take, to feel comfortable with him as a franchise quarterback? I think it probably takes more than just one good season of play. It's probably going to take this year a franchise tag and another good season of football in order to really look at him as a franchise quarterback. So I don't think it's necessarily possible to be all in on Daniel Jones even after the 2022 season. I'll try to be. I want to be, because I want to see him succeed and I want the Giants to get their franchise quarterback. But really, I think with the Giants, it's time to start looking at Daniel Jones and saying, can he be a solid starter? Can he be a serviceable starter this year? Because in years past, he hasn't even been that much. He hasn't even been good enough to be well renowned across the league as a solid starting quarterback. The Giants offense has been terrible ever since he took over, and a lot of that isn't his fault. But now that some of those excuses are taken away from him, what can he do? That's the key here for Daniel Jones. So we're going to, of course, look at the nuance of every single practice and say, hey, he threw some bad throws today. He had a bad practice day. But really, it all comes down to when he's facing different competition. That's why I say I'm excited for the preseason, see how he plays against some different coverage looks, some different, level of talent on terms of the defensive side of the ball, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, once we roll into the regular season for Daniel Jones, it's going to be great for him to have such great coaches that know how to utilize the skilled players and the playmakers like Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney. That's huge for Daniel Jones for sure. But Daniel Jones also just needs to be the best version of Daniel Jones possible if he wants to be here in 2023.
Yeah, and look, he's got the playmakers to make it happen right now. I just watched a video of Kadarius Toney with a gorgeous route. Stacked the cornerback, got over top, and unfortunately, the ball just kind of went to the outside. Still a nice pass, but if they let him upfield, this is an easy touchdown in my opinion. So pretty nice there. But I have to say, Kadarius Toney has been doing such a good job so far in practice. Just showing up every day and making plays. He's today they actually had him in the Wildcat, which is pretty cool. Doing some unique things with Saquon Barkley and Wan'Dale Robinson alongside him. That's a pretty cool setup, right, Anthony? Like, you have Kadarius Toney at quarterback, Saquon and Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale actually took a handoff today as well. This is going to be a very unique offense where they're getting a lot of these playmakers activated in very unique and versatile ways. How exciting is that for you? Because last year we didn't really see that versatility. They just kind of kept everyone in a stagnant spot. Nobody did anything creative. Every now and then you see Kadarius Toney throw a pass, but it was like once every 5 or 6 games. I think they're really just going to utilize all of these players to their strengths, do some unique things. Brian Daboll spoke to Kadarius Toney maybe 2 days ago or so, or 3 days ago, and was like, hey, like, we actually want to get you involved in a multitude of different ways. Are you open to that idea? And he was like, yes, absolutely. I want to get involved. So clearly Wildcat, something they're going to try and do. I would not be surprised if they did some more things to them as well. But like, how cool is it they're going to be really maximizing these guys' athletic attributes instead of just kind of holding them back?
I think it's super important because it's something that, every coach says we're going to get this guy super involved. We're going to utilize him in a variety of ways. but which coaches actually have the ability to do it? Because it's always easier said than done, right? You can have anybody line up and run a curl route. You can have anybody line up and run a slant route. But what about having Kadarius Toney move in motion and then take, move motion into the backfield and then take a Texas route to the house, right? How are you going to unlock that level of Kadarius Toney? That's a little bit different than just having him line up outside and run a little drag route or catch a screen pass. So maximizing his abilities, maximizing his talents means looking at every skill that he has, including throwing the football, running the football, taking handoffs, catching screen passes, going deep, looking at all of that stuff and maximizing what he does best and having him do the things that he does best at the highest level. So that's what's going to be super important here, because I know Jason Garrett said similar things, right? Yeah, we're going to get Kadarius Toney super involved. He's super versatile. We love everything he does. We're going to do everything that we can with him. We're going to have him throw a couple passes in the regular season. We're going to have him take some jet sweeps or some end arounds or whatever. And they did try to do those things. And Evan Engram caught some end arounds because he's super fast and blah, 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 right? But Jason Garrett, the coach speak was there, but the execution really was not there. He didn't execute, and the players also didn't execute. So of course, I know the players get a lot of blame, as they should, but I'm talking about in terms of having Brian Daboll make claims about what he's going to do with specific players and Mike Kafka make claims about how he's going to utilize specific players. It's a little bit more believable because you watch what they did over in Kansas City and Buffalo versus what they used to do in Dallas when Jason Garrett got here. Jason Garrett would make these claims and you watch what they did with those players in Dallas and you're like, okay, but he's never done that with a player before. So should we expect him to do it now? And then he didn't do it now. And that's where the Giants offense faltered. It was a lot of bad coaching. It was a very vanilla offense and it did not maximize the potential of the players inside of it. So looking at Brian Daboll, looking at Mike Kafka, I have a lot more trust in them and just to know that they will actually put practice into play. And I think that's going to be a huge thing because what we're seeing right now in practice, it is just practice at the end of the day. But these are guys who will put practice into play. So we will see some big plays from Kadarius Toney. We will see him used in a variety of ways. And we'll see probably some breakout seasons on the offensive side of the ball, maybe from Saquon Barkley, maybe from Kadarius Toney, hopefully from everybody.
I was going to say about Saquon, they've been using him in a myriad of different ways now. We're kind of used to seeing him just run up the gut and try to turn out a couple of yards or bounce it outside and, do his kind of thing. But I'll tell you what, they've been splitting him out wide a lot. That's something that a lot of people are saying is that he's been out wide as a receiver a couple times. He had a route today against Tay Crowder that was absolutely lethal, bro. Like he comes out of the backfield, gives Tay Crowder a shimmy and just guns it up the seam. It was beautiful. And look, linebackers against Saquon Barkley in coverage are not going to be easy, but especially ones that aren't as athletic like Tay Crowder. He completely burned him, left him in his dust. So really nice to see they're using Saquon in a myriad of ways, out wide, maybe even get him in the slot, maybe in like a bunch formation with Wandale and Kadarius could be pretty cool. Using him in the wildcat, maybe having Wandale and Saquon in the backfield with Daniel Jones, can really do some cool things with some screens there. Or just, some play action stuff. So it should be really cool to see how they utilize all these playmakers and, develop an offense that's not so predictable. The last 3, 4, 5 years with Ben McAdoo, I'd say 5 years, honestly, we've been able to predict these plays as fans watching from our couches. You know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, we know this play. We know where this is going. Finally, it seems like they're going to be installing some ideas and some plays here that we don't really know what's going to happen. And I think if we can tell what's going to happen, you better believe the opposing defense knows what's going to happen. So, if we can't tell, at least there's a little bit of a probability that the opposing defense has no idea what's going on. So, trending in the right direction there. I am excited about that. But, let's discuss Evan Neal for a second. Evan Neal got beat up a couple times today and yesterday against Jaheed Ward, veteran guy from Baltimore. He really turned him around today, which would have been a sack on Daniel Jones. He ended up completing it downfield with Richie James with Darnay Holmes in coverage. But Evan Neal's definitely gotten his work cut out for him the last couple of days. Great run blocker, as we know, but his pass blocking definitely is going to need some work. I think it more or less just needs experience, right? Like this is a guy who is making the transition as a rookie, right tackle, played left tackle last year. I think ultimately he just needs a little bit of time. This is exactly where you want to be messing up. This is where you want to be struggling because you can learn from every single mistake, every single lost rep. This is where he can actually make progress and learn. What did I do wrong this time? Jaheed Ward seemed like he beat him around the edge with a little bit more speed. So maybe setting up wider, just kicking out on a stance a little bit wider could help. But Anthony, what are your thoughts on Evan Neal getting beat a couple times today, but showcasing pretty good stuff as a run blocker early on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not buying too deeply into it. I'm not that worried about it. I've always said Evan Neal, he is a phenomenal offensive tackle prospect. He's going to step in and be a solid player for the Giants, but that's also solid in relation to or in comparison to Nate Solder and Mike Remmers and those guys that we've had there. Marshall Newhouse, if you remember him, right? Those guys were god awful. So yeah, Evan Neal's going to step in and he's going to be a much better player than those guys were, even with rookie growing pains. And I've said that. I've been very consistent with that. As much as I love Evan Neal, as pro ready as I think he is, as great of a player as he currently is, he's going to have growing pains. He's going to struggle at times because he's a rookie. That's just how it is. Offensive tackles, it's very rare that they come in their rookie year and have a year like Tristan Wirfs or a year like Rashawn Slater. You're talking about maybe one offensive tackle in each class doing that every year. If that, it usually doesn't even happen for any of the offensive tackles in a rookie class. Usually they struggle for a year or two and then they start to pick it up. And that's very normal because offensive tackle is one of the most difficult positions in the sport. You're trying to be a ginormous 6'8" human being that's getting in front of 6'4" human beings that are sometimes faster and stronger than you. Like, you're always at a disadvantage when you're an offensive tackle. It's not an easy position to play. And it's especially not easy to go from playing in college to playing in the pros where you're not facing kids anymore. College guys, those are kids. Now you're facing grown men, like literal grown men. How old is Jahad Ward? I don't even remember. I think he's like probably over 30 years old. This is a guy who's been playing at the NFL level for probably 10 years. Like, he knows all the tricks in the book. He might not be the best player. He might not know how to do everything or might not have the technical ability to do everything to beat you up, but he knows what it takes to beat people up because he's been doing it for years. He's a veteran. He is a professional. Evan Neal is a rookie. He is an amateur. He does not know how to just dismantle offense or defensive linemen just yet. But one day he will. One day he'll be that 10-year veteran who's just dismantling defensive linemen and dominating on the football field. But for right now, he's going to have growing pains. Every rookie offensive tackle has their fair share of growing pains. So no, I'm not concerned at all by the fact that Evan Neal was beat a few times in practice today. If we get into the regular season and he lets up, a sack per game, obviously that will be concerning, but I don't expect that to happen. I just think it's going to take him a little bit of time to get acclimated. And once again, I'm going to bring up the preseason being right around the corner. That's when things will start to settle down for Evan Neal. He'll start to get a feel for the pro game. He'll face some different veteran defensive linemen that he's never seen before, some guys that have a talent level that he's never witnessed. He'll get used to that. It's going to take him a little bit of time, but he will get used to it and he will settle in and be a solid pro for the Giants. I have no doubts about that. He's already looked good as a run blocker in practice, but yeah, he's going to have his fair share of struggles in the passing game, dude. That's just what it takes when you're a rookie offensive tackle. And honestly, Giants fans should know that better than anybody because we just watched Andrew Thomas in 2020 have a real struggle of a rookie season, bounce back as in his sophomore year, look like a completely new player, new and improved player. So we should all know this all too well that Evan Neal, he's going to have his share of struggles as a rookie, but just wait on it because he will be a good player one day.
Yeah, I fully believe that. And, the only other real big takeaway today, obviously, Adoree Jackson mentioned before, had a big practice. But, Brian Dable's doing a lot to protect his quarterbacks these days. This is a guy who definitely values the health of a quarterback because today there were a couple pass rushers, Ocean Eximitas and Nico Lalo specifically, came a little bit too close to Daniel Jones and Davis Webb, and Dable went absolutely crazy on both of them, gave them both an earful. Oshimin has almost made contact with Jones's legs as he threw a pass, and Lalos came a little bit close to Webb. So Dable is doing everything he can to mitigate injury, make sure that his pass rushers are not putting because all it takes is a pass rusher to trip. You're getting too close to the quarterback, you trip, fall into their legs, and then bam, you're talking about torn ACL, whatever it might be, and you're in big trouble, right? Like, you're in serious trouble. So keeping those quarterbacks healthy is priority number one for this team, obviously, making sure this is kind of a monitored practice and not, overdoing it. So that's the main thing. Eli Manning, like I said before, was at practice today watching, spoke to the team afterwards, some good stuff. Injuries include Antonio Williams came up limp after a catch. He was rubbing his quad. I don't think it's anything too serious. Then, of course, Dame Belton broke his collarbone. I don't think we mentioned that yesterday. He, when we were talking about it, we didn't know what the injury was just yet, but he has a broken collarbone. I expect him to miss at least 7 to 8 weeks. So he could be ready after the first couple of weeks, but likely as they put him on IR and he comes off week 4 or something. I think it's after week 4, you can make a return from IR. So that's kind of what I'm expecting from them, making sure he gets the proper reps in practice. He's ready for football upon his return instead of, just keeping him on the roster until he's ready to go. So He's going to need some time to come back as a rookie anyway. But any last thoughts on today's practice? I think we covered most of everything.
Yeah, one last thing that I'll mention is John Feliciano again did not participate. Bro, are you good? Like, is this man okay? This is like a heat and hydration issue. It's been lasting for almost a week now. This is getting concerning. But apparently, Ben Bredesen stepped in today and had a really good, solid practice. So that's something to take note of, I guess. Ben Bredesen, of course, I'm not too high on. I doubt any of you are very high on him after the performances that he churned out last season. But I know Shane Lemieux apparently had a solid day of practice. Dexter Lawrence discussed the little tussle that they had on the field the other day. He said, "I didn't start it, I finished it." Dexter Lawrence said that. So Big Dexy is talking his game about Shane Lemieux. But yeah, so first strong center today is Ben Bredesen in the rotation that started with Jamil Douglas and Shane Lemieux as Feliciano continues to sit out. So there you go. I mean, Feliciano's still not on the practice field. Hopefully he gets back out there soon. Hopefully he's ready for the preseason. If this is like that serious of an issue, man, I hope that he recovers soon enough. I thought, the practice off on Sunday would have been good enough, but then Monday comes around and he's still not practicing. Tuesday's here, he's still not practicing. Hopefully he gets involved by the end of the week.
Yeah, they said he's close. He was in pads today, was just kind of doing individual stuff on the side, so that's a good thing for him. But guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of Fireside Giants, discussing a couple of the main takeaways from today's practice. Got you guys covered on the daily as always. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
TVSO.